Well, welcome everybody to the third in our series of the Grief Business Seminars. My name is Rick Berg, and it is wonderful to be together. I'm live here from First Memorial Funeral Services in Garden Memories in Victoria, BC, the sponsor of this series. I hope that you have a chance to look at the previous two Grief Business Seminars. And I'm excited tonight to be able to share with you the last one. Understanding post-pandemic loss, and to take advantage of what it's taught us in our business culture and environment. I want to talk about moving towards a grief-friendly culture, a grief-friendly business culture, both for our employees and for our customers. Now, I know that some of you are thinking, why would we do this? What's the point of these soft skills of entering into conversations, or at least being aware of grief and loss in our employees and in our customers' life? Well, I believe that it's pretty significant. And if we begin to kind of think about that a little bit more, perhaps it can become a model for us to actually create a grief-friendly culture. One that moves towards understanding people, having empathy. One that allows us to enter into conversations that might not actually be anything about our product, but about being part of the person's life. Something that they've gone through, something that they've experienced that actually might influence a sale. That it actually might be about having that customer come back to us, about a referral program that we've never thought of before. Grief is part of all of our lives. And I think during COVID, we've come to understand that grief and loss has become part of who we are. As I mentioned often in some of the past seminars, we are all experiencing loss at different levels. Whether we think of them as small or big, they're losses that all of us are going through. And I want to talk about creating this grief-friendly culture, first of all, in terms of our employees. Bread and butter. Yeah, we might have a product or service, but the bread and butter of our business is the employees who share this. True? Yeah. If you have good employees, you have a good company. And a good company is filled with employees that care about your product or service and are willing to share it because they believe in it and because they believe in you as a leader. I want to talk about employees first. Excuse me. I want to talk a little bit about grief and loss in your employee's life and why we need to consider that in creating a loss-friendly culture. You know, when you think about COVID again and what it's brought to us, it's quite challenging. Some of the statistics around some of the difficulties of COVID are part of your employee's life. And they've impacted in all kinds of different ways, maybe not directly, but perhaps indirectly, through a friend, a family member, a co-worker, a neighbor, a friend. Some of the statistics around COVID has been quite challenging for us in Canada. The suicide rates have risen dramatically. Divorce rates around the world, again, have risen dramatically. Drug overdose is becoming rampant in our culture, in our communities. Domestic abuse is at its highest point ever. Now you may ask, well, why? Well, because of loss, I think. Loss is a contributing factor to all these different difficulties in people's lives. When you think about your employee, I want you to think about what it is they've been missing in their life that they now want to be part of their life. What it is that's been missing in their life that they now want as part of their life moving forward. You see, in many ways, COVID has allowed people to examine a little bit more what is important to them. When you have time to reflect and think, you examine your life. You examine the priorities that you want in your life. And I think this has happened. I'm discovering this in my grief practice. Many people are beginning to look a little bit deeper at their lives and wonder what might be missing, what has been missing. Prior to COVID, people were busy. And we know that most people worked in the office. They drove to their office. They spent their hours there. They drove home. Those 8-hour days turned into 10-hour days, 11-hour days. Once they were at home working, at least part-time, they began to look at life a little bit differently. They began to look at, well, what might be missing? What has been missing as a result of my work environment? And that's not to judge the work environment. It's just to say that there's some things in people's lives that have become more important. And they're thinking about these things. They're talking about these things. They're wondering about whether or not they can have these things that were missing, that they're now part of their life, that they really enjoyed. And if their work environment will allow this to happen. Now, we've heard so much information, so much media upon a hybrid approach to work now, that COVID is slowly kind of moving forward. There's some light at the end of the tunnel. There's this whole philosophy of a hybrid approach of working some at home and some in the business environment. But I think it goes beyond this, what people are thinking of. Yes, maybe people are thinking it would be great to have some flexibility in my work, whether that be working at home or in the actual building. But I think people are actually thinking about what is the most important in their life, what they really want, what they want to focus in moving forward. People have time to think and reflect deeply. And this is going to impact the work environment. It's going to impact your business as leaders. You see, mortality has been, at the front of people's lives. We've seen death and dying and grief many times over during COVID. People are thinking about it. They wonder about it. It's looked them in the face. And when death looks you in the face, you begin to think about time. Time as a precious commodity, as a gift. And people are saying, what's the best use of my time? Because I don't know what the future holds. I mean, when you face mortality, people are saying, well, it could be me, or it could have been me. I don't know the future of my life. It's so not known. And so time is precious. What should I focus on as I move forward? As leaders in businesses, we need to consider what we need to focus in order to retain that employee who is having these questions about what's important, what's a priority, what do I really need to happen in my life? I think that we need to focus on people first and let the business thrive. Focus on people first and let the business thrive. We need to focus on people, what they're going through, what they need. And I think it begins by considering what it means to be a grief-friendly business and create a business culture that is loss-friendly. Loss is part of everyone's life. And we talk about the cycle of life. Well, every single person in your company that's employed by you will go through numerous losses that need to be processed managed, and moved through. And you as a company need to meet their needs at one of the most crucial times in their life, during times of loss. Loss should not be hidden. Every single person in your company is going through loss at different times. To acknowledge those losses, to accept them, to honor them is a brilliant strategy to help your employees remain with you because you're caring, because you care about what they're going through. You know, when my first wife was diagnosed with cancer at 42 years of age, I felt my life was exploding in unknown, in stress, and uncertainty. I mean, I had 4 kids. What now? She needed me to take care of her. My kids needed me to be part of their life. And I was traveling from home to a work at that point in my life, an hour away from our home. I had a very good job. But all of a sudden I realized that I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't spend that extra 3 hours on the road per day and leave my wife, who was going through chemotherapy, and my kids, who were wondering what was happening, what would be next, by themselves. And so I went and talked to my boss and I explained the situation. And I told him that I'm sorry, but I would have to resign from my position because I needed to go home and take care of my wife. And this was his response. No, please. He says, you can work from home. You can do whatever you need to do in order to take care of your wife and your family. He said, look, every couple of weeks, come in and check in. But I trust you and I care about you. Well, I have to be honest with you, I cried. I did, because I experienced a compassionate boss that understood what I was going through and was willing to give me some time and slack, so to speak, because he cared. Now tell me, do you think that I worked extra hard for him? That I did my best? That I went overboard in my work with him in the future? Because he entered into my loss at that time in my life in a meaningful way? Absolutely. I was faithful to him because of what he did. Well, fast forward, 5 years later, I moved to another community, and my first wife died 5 years later from cancer. But I was fortunate enough to have another boss who understood what I needed when I was going through my grief experience. Take as much time as you need, they said to me. This job will be waiting for you when you return. Don't worry, you'll be paid the same salary. a caring, compassionate employer who got what it meant to be loss friendly, grief friendly. That's how I was treated, and I was faithful to them as well. You know, it's fascinating for me to think about how we're treated in our work environment and how that contributes to whether or not we work harder or stay longer. And I think it does. I think it does. And employee retention is huge. But so is customer retention. And the second part of this lecture focuses upon those customers of yours who are also going through grief and loss, and there are many. You don't always know the story of those who walk in to purchase a product or service from you. But I guarantee you that they're no different than you or I. They're going through their challenges. Their loss stories are also significant. And they're struggling just like you and I are. And when you think about it, what an opportune time to enter into their lives and to be seen as a caring and compassionate company. Think about that. Caring and compassionate company. You know, following that death of my first wife, I had an experience at a bank that I was banking at. They were my bank. And I had phoned them to tell them that my wife had died and I would need to come in and do some banking because you have to switch over accounts, you have to switch over names. This is part of the process. It was very difficult. It's very hard to do. You know, so 2 days after my wife died, I had to get this paperwork done in the midst of grieving and caring for my family, planning a funeral service. I made an appointment with my bank. And I arrived there. I was supposed to meet with them at 10:30. And as I walked into the bank, the receptionist guided me over to a sitting area and said, "Your bank manager will be there shortly." 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I saw the bank manager yapping and talking off to the side to somebody from the bank. And I was angry. Didn't they know? Didn't they know that my wife had just died? I told them that. And I was sitting in a waiting room wanting to meet to do the paperwork so I could move forward in my life. It was important. I walk into that office and I sat down and the manager took out a blank piece of foolscap paper, looked at me and said, "So what can I do for you? What can I do for you?" That was his question. I phoned. I had told them what I needed. I was expecting the paperwork to be ready. And I looked at him. And I said, "My wife has died. I need the paperwork done to switch over her account to me." He said, "Oh, I mean, I'll have to get that ready for you." That's what his words were. There was no empathy, no compassion, no understanding I left that bank that day. A few days later, the paperwork was in order. And a week later, I switched over to another bank. I took out thousands of dollars of investment from that bank to another place. Now, you may say that was kind of a rash decision, but it taught me something about a compassionate business. And certainly one that was not grief friendly or loss friendly, where employees didn't know what to say or how to engage with me. Yeah. It doesn't matter, friends, leaders of businesses, whether you are in the service industry or a product industry, your customers are experiencing loss at different times, especially right now during this pandemic and post-pandemic. Knowing what to say, not what to say, how to respond, how to listen, how to give space, is crucial to customer engagement that is compassionate. I guarantee that you will have that customer for life by engaging them at the most difficult time of their life in a way that's healthy. And you will create an effective referral program that won't cost you a dime. Just by creating a loss-friendly business culture. Thank you for joining me